I get criticized for talking about this in a business setting or in when I'm supposed to be talking about copywriting and marketing, but the biggest frustration to me is like all my subscribers, what they want. They want the magic formula. Tell me the formula, the copywriting formula, the marketing formula that's going to make me a lot of money.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Persuasion Play Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Thomas. I'll be your host. Today's guest is Doberman Dan. Dan, I don't even know how to say your last name. We should re-record it so I can get your last name right.
Oh, no, I'm glad you brought it up. This is so common. This is why I go by the silly moniker of Doberman Dan because my last name is so weird. Nobody can pronounce it or spell it. It's Galapoo. Imagine that. Imagine being in sixth grade, like Ruby, like your
Yeah,
dog,
sure.
with a last name that ends in poo. Um, the story behind it was my great grandfather emigrated here from French Canada, French speaking Canada,
Okay.
and it's a pretty common last name up there, Galipeau, spelled the French way, Galipeau. It's pretty common. But when he told the immigration people his name, they spelled it like they heard it. And
Mhm.
so then us generations got stuck with a last name that ends in poo. So it's Galapoo, but if you never say that last name again, that will be fine with me. Dan is just fine.
All right, Mr. Dan. Dan, you've been a direct response marketer and copywriter, successful for many years. But I'd like to go back a little bit and just kind of hear your story as best you can tell it. I know that before that, you were a cop in Ohio, in Barberton. Is that right?
Well, I grew up in Barberton.
Okay.
Um, but then where I became I after high school, I relocated to Dayton, Ohio, and that's
Oh,
where I
yes.
became a cop,
Okay.
which, you know, geez, it's only taken me 40 years to sort through and figure out why I did that because I was not on that track at all. Like, I mean, since age 7, the only thing I ever wanted to do with my life was creative stuff, specifically be a musician.
Yeah, yeah.
I learned to play the guitar at age 7. I taught myself to play the guitar because the local, I'm gonna have to apologize. It's allergy season here in Florida, so the sniffling and sneezing might be something you have to endure.
Okay.
Um, the local music store wouldn't allow me to take guitar lessons because they said, yeah, a 7-year-old kid will never stick with it. So they
Mm.
refused me. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I want to buy that book you got on the wall, the guitar book. I bought
Yeah.
the book I taught myself. And I knew, man, I just knew in that instant, this is what I'm going to do with my life. Somehow that got short circuited. And
But you still
yeah.
play, right?
Oh, I still play. Um, I'm about to release my second album of original music, but I took this hard right turn and became a cop. It took me a long time to figure out why, but we don't have to go into that. But so at age, I wasn't even 20 yet. I'm sorry, I wasn't even 21 yet. I think I started in the police academy at age 20 and then had a birthday a couple months later, and became 21, which was the minimum age to be a police officer. And yeah, I thought I'd do that for a short period of time. Short period of time turned out to be 12 years.
Mm.
And I discovered really within that first year, like, yeah, this is not anything I want to do for the rest of my life. But I got stuck in it.
Yeah.
And so this is like the mid 80s. And somebody back then hit me up for the old Amway business.
Mm.
Have you ever been
Yeah.
hit up for that?
I think a guy tried to do that yeah, about 20 years ago. We were both working a night shift at this McDonald's fulfillment center. And he, like for the restaurants, we'd put food on trucks and stuff. And he invited me to the coffee room and sat me down and had this big spiel, and I don't know the company that he was behind it, but it was some sort of MLM thing, and I was just like, yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. Man, a lot of us have gotten hit up for that. They start drawing the circles, and if you recruit six people and they recruit four, and those four,
Mhm.
um, but you know, I have to give credit where credit's due. That opened my eyes to the concept of owning your own business. That was the first time that I'd really ever considered it. I won't say first time I was exposed to it, because like
Yeah,
my
sure.
dad had started a few unsuccessful businesses, but it was the first time I considered like, oh yeah, a business of my own. That sounds good. Because the police department that first year, I knew like, ugh, can't stand this, doing this the rest of my life. And I failed miserably at that MLM stuff at the Amway business, but um, at least it started the concept in my mind of being self-employed. And through a roundabout way, I still don't remember how. I stumbled upon Dan Kennedy, and what he was pitching back then was because like after the Amway business failed, I thought, well, to achieve what I want to achieve, which was some level of, financial independence, so I could go play my guitar and not worry about paying the bills. Um, the concept of owning a business I like. So after I failed at Amway, I started a whole bunch of other what you'd call normal businesses, prior to direct response and definitely prior to the internet even being a viable medium for business. People would have thought you were crazy if you mentioned that back then. I kept starting these businesses, kept failing at them, but I sought out advice how to not fail. And that's how I stumbled upon Dan Kennedy. What he was pitching then was I have this magic formula. It's called direct response marketing and copywriting, which attracts customers to you instead of you
Make it
chasing.
make. Yeah.
And that whole Amway experience and all the other businesses I started after that was me chasing people, hounding them, pitching them. So them coming to me sounded great.
Yeah.
And so I bought his thing he was pitching, which was $497. It was a three-ring binder with paper and ink. This is
Mhm.
back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Way back in the day with six cassette tapes. Ruby won't even have frame of reference at all for what that even
Oh,
is.
actually, she does. I bought both my kids boom boxes with CD players and tape players, and made them a couple of mixtapes. The tape players, we got them at Target. Ate the first tape, like immediately ate tapes, and
Oh
was like,
my
"Well, guys, this is
God.
part of the gig."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad she knows at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, and all the concepts I learned from that course were right on. But what he was selling what that package of information was intended for was like a brick and mortar business owner who could start incorporating these direct response marketing principles and tactics into their business, which made sense to me since I'd failed at so many, regular businesses. But what got me really excited was I kind of like took the 30,000 feet from above view of this and thought, wait a minute here. This guy basically got $500 out of me. That was a lot of money
Oh yeah.
back in the early 90s, right? Um, it was a lot of money for me back then because I didn't have it. I put it on a credit card. But I thought, man, I paid this guy $500 for like paper and ink and cassette tapes.
Mhm.
Basically, he didn't have to be there to sell it to me. He used a letter to sell it to me. I thought, wait a minute, I'm intrigued by this. Let me do this. So, even though the info in that package was great and applicable to any brick and mortar business, I just observed his process of selling the info package
Mhm.
and then swiped it and used that as a model to develop an info product in a market that I was really passionate about at the time, which was bodybuilding. I created my own little bodybuilding course in a 3-ring binder with cassette tapes
Yeah.
and, later bulked it up to a video and even a training program on software, stuff like that, and started selling it with ads in the Muscle magazine, two-step ads, like a very small quarter page thing that said, again, they'll make me sound like a dinosaur because this is all pre-internet, but call us toll free recorded message to request your free report. Then I literally called the voicemail and hand transcribed all his calls in stuffed envelopes and sent them the report, which was my sales pitch in a letter.
Mhm.
And like I had struggled for 9 years trying with Amway and trying to start all these other different businesses while I was a cop. But that business started making money pretty quickly, that little mail order business. That's what opened the door to the whole direct response marketing thing and copywriting thing. I didn't even know what copywriting was. I didn't even know there was a profession called copyright. I didn't know you could hire a copywriter.
Yeah.
I just learned it myself. I just wanted the mail order business. What I wanted was you run an ad or you send out letters and money comes in. I didn't want to talk to people, didn't want to be a salesperson, and the mail order business checked all those boxes. So I thought, well, I got to learn how to write these letters that'll make people send me money. That opened the door to this whole thing. That's how it all started.
So how did that first sale feel? Like the first recorded, well, I guess that's the first step, but even that first recorded message.
Well, that was pretty exciting. I mean,
Yeah.
after so many when I say I started all these businesses, I've actually lost count. All right. There were a lot. It was probably like 2 to 3 a year for 9 years. You know, none of them made any money. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing with marketing, advertising. So I didn't know anything. The Actually, the biggest thing that caused me to not make any money with any of those businesses was mindset issues. I had been programmed from an early age to be such a lack thinker, fear-based lack. That was the biggest thing. But when that little mail order business started, like you asked about me calling in on that voicemail to transcribe the messages, like I was so excited. The first time I called in, whatever it said, I don't remember. It was 30 some messages or maybe 40 some messages from that first little ad I ran. Man, I was so excited. I have to tell you, I wasn't all that excited. Like, hours later, listening and re-listening to those messages to transcribe it, the, the
Yeah.
sales
The
letter.
reality
But
sets in.
man, that was so exciting. And then when money actually started coming in, that was even more exciting. I think when it really hit me though, was, I just kind of put my head down and worked, transcribing the messages, sending out the sales letter, doing my daily thing and not really looking up to check results for a while. And it was probably like maybe about 30 days later, I remember checking my bank balance, because I opened up a checking account specifically for this little mail order business, and there was $1,000 in that account. Now, granted, that's gross, right?
Mhm.
But still,
Yeah.
it made $1,000. I was hooked at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and especially if it's, kind of your first ad or your first, experience with that. That's great. And then did you continue running small ads at the time or did you move into bigger page ads? Did that make a difference? Did you test stuff like that or were you not even really familiar with testing at that point?
I didn't know nothing about nothing,
Yeah.
but I did like trying to think. I think the first magazine I ran in was, I mean, none of these magazines are even around anymore, was called Natural Bodybuilding and Fitness. The only reason I was able to run that ad is because there was an ad rep that I connected with there. This is back in the day when you actually had to talk to somebody by phone. His name was Bob Rose. And I explained my situation. I said, I am a police officer making a pittance as a salary. On top of that, I'm in debt. Not only broke, but I'm in debt. But I do have a couple $100 credit on a Visa. I know you guys are selling this little ad for whatever it was for $1,000. Can you possibly have mercy on me and allow me to test this ad for whatever it was? I think it was $200. And he agreed to it. And so once, I had proof of concept that it was working, then I started contacting the other magazines. And, I just ran that same small ad. It was later that I upped the size of the ad. But initially, when I was just like scaling up, I was just running those little, whatever it was. I think it was either a quarter of a page. It could have even been less than that. But I just started running it in more and more magazines, you know, then it started to get really exciting.
Yeah. Did you hire people then for fulfillment, or did you still have to do all the transcription and stuff?
Luckily, right from the beginning, well, initially I was doing my own fulfillment, right? Like I would go to Staples and have the stuff printed up and have the cassette, have the cassette copies made somewhere, and I'm stuffing things in priority mailboxes and doing it myself. But pretty soon after that, somebody introduced me to the people at that time who owned a company called Across America that did fulfillment services for mail order businesses like that. And they not only did that, they did like they would take incoming calls for you
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I worked with them almost right from the beginning. It didn't take me long to realize like, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to be a shipping clerk. I don't want to be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I connected with them. So even prior to the internet, like I had kind of a little um work from anywhere business, right? Like if people want, I gave people the option to call to order. The calls went to Across America. Um, and then the fulfillment, the packages were being shipped out by them. So I had that internet lifestyle, live anywhere, work from anywhere
Mhm.
back prior to the internet because of that.
Yeah. That's cool. I have a product of yours, I don't know from when, but called remote control selling. And you talk about getting remnant space in to run ads, at a lower rate. And when I had first listened to that, I was working with a friend on an insurance lead generation type thing. And I tried to lowball a local like retirement magazine thing that you can get for free at the store. I sent him a check and I said, "This is all we can afford. We'd love to run on this ad." And she just sent it back and said,
Oh, she sent it
I
back.
didn't even
Oh my
open
God,
the didn't even open the little sheet that had that check in it.
man.
All right.
I'm sorry to hear that. That technique always worked for me, but with a caveat.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, well, first of all, I didn't use it a lot. I almost always talked to somebody and persuasion one-on-one or over the phone is not my forte. So I usually just begged. I'm like, I'm poor, I'm broke, I really want to run this ad because frankly, my job is killing me. I
Hmm.
want to get out of it. That was my negotiation. But the few times I did use that technique, I just like I'd send a check for whatever amount I could pay, so please cash the check or run the ad. A few times I did it, it worked. I have noticed though, like, wow, boy, have things changed with print publications. It probably goes back about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I worked with one of my newsletter subscribers who wanted to start running an ad in print. And so I started contacting a lot of publications and I realized, oh man, it's way different than back in the day when I did this. Like there's no incentive for ad reps anymore. Like, Bob Rose, the first ad rep I met, he was paid on commission. Nowadays they get salary.
Okay.
There's no incentive for them to work with you to negotiate, to allow you to test at a lower rate, so you can,
Just get out there.
run at the regular rate down the road. Once you got proof of concept, your ad's going to work. Yeah. Sadly, things are a lot different now in
Yeah.
print.
So I was at dentist recently, and they had like a whole bunch of Us magazines and People magazines, and I think those are kind of celebrity driven. So there's people that are still interested in. But yeah, like you just said, the bodybuilding magazines are pretty much probably all gone. I think there's probably still like Car and Driver out there and a few others, but you know, other than online, what type of offline print media is there? I get the Sunday and the Thursday newspaper, and most of the neighborhood doesn't. Most of the people I talk with don't get it. And even when I page through those papers, there's very few ads.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of hurts me because that's how I learned this business in print. And when I see print dying, now I feel like the old guy, that I used to make fun of back in my day. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, kind of like the last bastion of are people still reading the newspaper? Yeah, but boy, that's dying out.
That they'll read it online, but yeah, the physical
Yeah.
paper less and less, absolutely.
And there's still magazines being published. It's just circulation is way down.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, pretty much the last bastion of print is direct mail. That's changed a lot too.
Oh,
Back in the day, when I say back in the day, like prior to the internet really coming into prominence as a marketing medium, um, direct mail was so much bigger. There were so many more lists available for rent. There were a lot more list brokers. You know, the list brokers could make money because, a company would come along and they'd say like, well, we want to test your list. So they'll test their list. If the list worked for their offer, they'd be like, great, give us 1 million names, give us 2 million names. The list broker makes a commission based on that rental. So, boy, that's a lot of that has gone away. The amount of lists available for rent is a lot less. Good luck finding a list broker. I knew everybody in that business at one time, and then everybody got out of it because they couldn't make money. So,
mm,
like, I set myself up as a list broker just to have access to the list wholesaler. Not that I want to make money as a list broker, just to have access to the wholesaler because I was having a difficult time finding lists. And like when my subscribers or clients would ask about it, I'd be like, I don't know who to send you to anymore.
mm.
So it's still there. You can still get lists, and it's still definitely a viable medium. It's not like it was back in the heyday of direct
Yeah.
mail.
Like I think the two main sites I know are Nextmark, I think it's called, and SRDS. And SRDS are, all the conversations I've heard people talking about is like, oh, go to your library. They've all got it. And I can't find any library that has it. They don't have it
Oh,
anymore,
I bet. Yeah, I haven't been to a library in years. I used to go to the library to specifically ask for the SRDS or ask them like, because I think the new copies of the SRDS book came out quarterly, and I would ask the librarian like, "Hey, when you get um the new version,
Yeah.
could I have the old one?"
Mm.
But I'm sure that's gone by now.
Yeah, I think you can buy it maybe from the SRDS website. Otherwise, they want you to do it online. But yeah, the libraries don't have it. At least that I've
Yeah.
seen. Yeah.
As far as direct mail goes, like you can still get lists. Like I just asked the wholesaler last week, like, do you guys have a list of accredited investors? Because one of my newsletter subscribers is going in that direction. And they're checking on that. He said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can. He hasn't gotten back to me, but you can still find lists that way. But like doing that, using direct mail for customer acquisition, it's always been difficult. And most people don't understand it. So they view it as costly or not cost efficient. Um, it's even harder now for customer acquisition to make it work. So like the best way to use direct mail is, if you got an online business, and most businesses are online in some way, shape, or form nowadays, when you make a sale, you've automatically captured their, oh, hopefully you've captured their mailing address, right? You have to if you're shipping a physical product, but even if you're selling digital stuff, I've always encouraged people to capture a mailing address. Now, basically, what you're doing, you're creating your own list. So even though the customer was acquired online, you can still do really well sending back end offers to your customers in direct mail. In addition to, I'm not saying to abandon email, but it's like in support of all the other social media and email marketing you're doing. That's like I think the best way to get into direct mail.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, at least for the recipient, I think it's a lot more fun to get something in the mail, even if it's just a pitch, But like, oh, look at an envelope from Dan. How fun is this? Part of the reason I guess why I still get the newspaper is just like I like to hold the things I'm reading and learning about rather than,
Yeah.
you know, like
It appears real. And oh wow, thanks.
yeah.
Oh, you bought my book. Thank you.
Yeah, that was real quick. Doberman Dan wrote Just Sell the Damn Thing. Very informative. I've read it multiple times about basically just how to create products and find your market and sell to them. Do you still send this out to people who request it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's super solid. I've read it a few times and I hadn't read it recently, and I just pulled it out to like, kind of prep for today. And I was like, oh man,
Oh,
so
cool.
good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I even read something from I'm forgetting the dude's name. Um he buys businesses. Anyway, he sends out like a daily tip. He was talking about, he said, it's obvious somebody who buys something on the front end is going to have a much higher lifetime customer value than somebody who just comes in on a free offer.
Mhm.
Then he talked about how one of the businesses he's working with, they tested, you know, it, once they tested, they did not want to go to do a free offer or lead gen anymore. They just knew it was just so much of a waste of time. They only wanted to do a paid offer on the front end. But they were doing a $49 paid offer, and then they decided to test a $97 paid offer. And he just sent out a little case study of the difference in lifetime customer value, and it was significant.
Yeah, there's Alex Hormozi. I just saw that headline today.
Yes, Hormozi. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I read that and I thought, you know, I feel vindicated because that was the whole topic of that book. Like people will come in on a free offer. It's just their value to you is nothing practically.
Mhm.
Even though that model is still taught, and in some cases it is an appropriate model. But when I saw him talk about the difference in lifetime customer value from the $47 front end versus 97, I thought like, yeah, I feel vindicated. Woulda, shoulda, coulda, hindsight being 2020, I should have named it something else, but it is what it is.
It is, yeah. Um, you could make a second edition. Just
Yeah.
clean it up a little.
Make it look like a whole new book. Do a
Yeah,
whole brand new book launch.
could be. Right. All right. Well, so you got your start in selling bodybuilder stuff. Did you continue with that? Did you branch into separate markets? I know at some point you met Gary Halbert and the two of you lived together in Costa Rica. I'd love to hear some of that story.
Yeah, so what happened was I realized, and pretty soon into that first mail order business, I realized like, hey, these guys will buy information. I've proven that. I can make money selling information. It's not what they want though. What they want the magic pill.
Yeah.
They want the magic pill or the protein powder that's going to turn them into Arnold overnight. Well, that does not exist.
What?
Yeah, sorry to burst your bubble. But I mean, there are some like core staple supplements for muscle heads, um, protein powders, creatine. There's, certain vitamin supplements, stuff like that I realized, okay, so I can sell them what they want, but I will give them what they need. What they truly need is the correct information. They need to know how to train and they need to know how to eat. It's called a supplement because it's supposed to supplement. It ain't the thing, right?
Sure.
It's just like it gives you a slight edge once you got your training and nutrition right. So I thought, well, I'm not going to fight human nature because I'll go broke. At least I was smart enough to realize that. So I'll sell them what they want. So I made that switch to turning it into a supplement business. Initially, it was just I sold supplements on the back end to the buyers of my info products.
Mhm.
Then I just changed the entire structure of the business that just became a supplement business that I really no longer sold the info. I just gave it as a bonus. So like you're buying a protein powder because you want to gain muscle. Well, you're going to get my gain muscle booklet or report as a free bonus, which is what you truly need. But I'm going to sell you what you want anyway. So that turned into a supplement business. And that lasted a while. Initially, that was one separate business. Then I identified some stuff going on in the market that which was really hot at the time in the 90s. There were these things called pro hormones. So they were like one enzyme away from being a hormone, but they could legally be sold. So when you took them, like an enzyme in your body combined with it, which would make it into a hormone, those were really hot at the time. And so I started a new bodybuilding supplement business just for those. Um, yeah, so I was in the musclehead supplement business for quite some time. When I was still in that, that's when I met Halbert. 'Cause like I'd been following Halbert for a while, and I started sending him correspondence and just to get on his radar. Like he also grew up in Barberton, Ohio. And I just resonated with what he wrote in his newsletter. And I really thought, like, man, if I could learn what this guy knows, I think I could shortcut years. I was already successful with direct response marketing, moderately successful. I was making a living. I ditched my job by that point. I was supporting myself, but I thought, man, I could take it to the next level if I could just know what this Halbert guy knows. So I started doing things to get on his radar. And then one thing he wrote in his newsletter, like a sneaky little tactic to get the attention of a what he called a PWM, a player with money,
Yeah.
very high, a VIP kind of person. I turned that around on and used it on him. And that's when I got the phone call from him.
What's that technique that you used?
It's pretty ingenious, I have to admit. He said, and then this is kind of old school. It'd probably still work today, but he said, like, write an article about the person you want to contact and like write an article about them and have it formatted to look like it came out of the newspaper or a magazine or something. And so I wrote an article about, these two guys from Barberton, Ohio meet, Doberman Dan and Gary Halbert, and they start working. This is pre-internet. They start working on mail order projects together, and they make so much money that they wind up buying the city of Barberton and turning it into the world's largest parking lot. And so I had that article formatted to look like it was running on the front page of the Barberton Herald, with a masthead up there, the newspaper for
Yeah.
Barberton, Ohio. And I put it in the most expensive frame I could find, this really nice gold frame, and I FedExed it to him. And that was his technique for getting the attention of a VIP. And it worked. He called me. That started the process of us getting to know each other by phone, by email, stuff like that.
Mhm.
That's how I wound up working with Gary.
That's pretty cool. And then he moved in with you, or you moved in with him in Costa Rica?
Well, so he wrote a newsletter about Costa Rica, how wonderful it was.
Mhm.
And at that at that time we'd established the relationship. So I called him and asked him some questions about Costa Rica. And his girlfriend from Costa Rica happened to be in town with him in Miami at the time. So she helped answer some of my questions. And then I just got this wild idea. Like I was so tired of the Ohio winters in January, I just up and like either gave away or sold all my possessions. And all I had left was like three changes of clothes, my laptop, um, a guitar, and this 80-pound Doberman. And sight unseen, never having visited, I up and moved to Costa Rica.
Sweet.
So once I was there, I sent him an email and said, "Hey man, after reading your newsletter and talking to you and your girlfriend about Costa Rica, just want to let you know I'm living here
I'm
now."
here.
Yeah. And he said, "Yeah, mind if I crash at your place when I come down in a couple weeks?" I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." So he stayed with me for like a weekend because I had a spare bedroom. And and then it was a couple of weeks later, he said, "Yeah, can I crash at your place again when I'm coming down?" I said, "Of course, and I'm assuming it's going to be for a few days." He wound up staying for like 3 months or close to 4 months, I guess.
Well, so were you running the body business through fulfillment and you're just working down there kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, across Americas was still handling all the incoming phone calls and all the fulfillment, so I could live anywhere.
That's slick. Yeah. So then when you were down there, I'm sure working with Gary, you learned a lot. I mean, did you work with him or was it more just hangout time?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of hangout time because you know, Gary wouldn't mind me saying this. I mean, he talked about it himself. It was really hard to get him to work sometimes.
Hmm.
When he buckled down and worked, like he would focus with a focus like I've never seen anybody have. But it was really hard to get him to work. So there was a lot of hanging out time, but we did work together. And then after that, I thought I was going to stay in Costa Rica. I had no plans on coming back to the US, but he talked me into coming to Miami. Like he had a bunch of client work and he wanted to continue working with me on that stuff. And I'm like, "Please, Gary, can we just do it virtually? You can send me stuff by email and whatever." And he goes, "No, you have to be there in person." And so he lived in this building in Miami. He had his own apartment, and then he had a small one bedroom, more like a studio apartment that he would allow clients to stay there for a few days when he was working with them. But so he allowed me to stay in that client apartment for several months while I worked with him in Miami.
At one point, you had mentioned in the Doberman Dan letter, um, I think it was basically just hand copying a ton of successful ads. Is that something he put you through? Is that right? I recall.
Yeah, I'd done some of that on my own, but
Yeah.
like he forced me to do it when I was working with him, which was, it's still a great exercise.
Yeah, I've done it a lot, but right now I'm going through Derek Johansson's copy hour, and it's like 90 days of sales letter copying, and I'm on day 72, I think. So doing all
Oh,
right.
no.
But I mean, I've done it with a bunch of the Collier letter book and just other stuff throughout the years as well. Yeah, it's super helpful.
Yeah, it really is. Nobody wants to do that,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like it's tedious, but man, it really does. There's Our nervous system is weird, but weird in a good way. Like it literally forms neural pathways that you couldn't really do any other way. It's pretty cool.
Um, yeah, like you said, nobody wants to do it. He Derek Johansson only opens it periodically. I don't know, and so a whole bunch of us started kind of all at the same time. And as far as I can see, I'm kind of the only one standing still, but who knows?
Well, kudos to you, but
Yeah,
it also doesn't surprise me. Most people are not going to stick with that.
yeah. All right, so back then you'd rent mailing lists and stuff. Then the internet came along. What changed about everything and how and print media is dying as well. How do you find clients or how do clients find you these days?
Um, well, I've done a lot of stuff to promote myself. Um, Podcast interviews, speaking at events. I've published books. Um, I refer that as grunt work, right? Like that's all manual labor stuff. My newsletter was, when I first started my newsletter, I still have my supplement business. So I viewed my newsletters as another income stream. And that's the only thing I viewed it as, just the subscription income. Plus I thought, oh, this will discipline me to write down a lot of these lessons I want to share. Now I gotta write them every month because now I have a deadline because I have people paying for them.
Hmm.
And that was the intention when I started it. But then later, when I sold my bodybuilding supplement business, then the publishing business became the main thing. And then that became a feeder system for copywriting clients.
Yeah, sure.
So um, so that's there, the newsletter. People get it every month. And so hopefully when somebody needs a copywriter, I'm maybe going to be like one of the first guys they consider because I've been probably the only guy showing up in their mailbox, their snail mailbox every month.
Hmm.
So that's it. And then I guess like most people find me organic. Like Dan Kennedy has mentioned me in some of his books and in a lot of his newsletters. He's spoken about me from stage at various events. That stuff is
I
all
can't.
out there
Yeah.
in on the internet. So that brings in people. Nowadays, it's, people finding me through my website and stuff. I've cut way back on client work over the past couple years.
Did you reopen the Doberman Dan letter? There was a time that you said no new subscribers. Was that open again to new
Yeah,
subscribers?
it's open again. It's just I'm not promoting it.
Hmm.
If anybody subscribes, it's because they found me organically. They went to my website, they opt in and then they get some messages about subscribing. I've not actively promoted it for quite some time. Um, for a lot of reasons, I really screwed up the whole newsletter thing. I really screwed it up right from the beginning. And I knew better. Like what I would have, if I would have advised somebody, it's still an actual hard copy print newsletter is still a great strategy for building a business, especially if you're selling like a really high fee service offer. And I'd advise people like you really tightly define your ideal avatar and you target them. So it's going to be like, are targeting dentists good? Yeah, that's good. You know what's great though? Targeting something even small, like cosmetic dentists, for example. You know, I can tell you exactly how to reach those people, the best way to reach them. You can build a business that way with a newsletter. The newsletter as the feeder system for your high fee service. But what I did was my mentors, Dan Kennedy and Gary Halbert, they went really broad. Their avatar was business owners. Man, that's a surefire way to go broke.
Okay.
I I shouldn't have been able to make it work. I shouldn't even be able to make it work now. Definitely now it's way harder. I shouldn't be able to make this work. I made it work for a really long time. I've been publishing for, I can't remember, 15 or maybe, or is this my 16th year? I can't recall, but um, that was really stupid. Business owners is way too broad, In the beginning, people would even ask me, who's your newsletter for? And I'd say, well, anybody who uses direct response marketing or who wants to use direct response marketing, you can't affordably reach people that way. So for a lot of reasons, I stopped promoting it. If I really wanted to make that work, I'd have to niche it down these days. Um, you know, but I've got what Dan Kennedy calls lifers, right? I've got my core group of lifers, which is much smaller. My subscriber base is much smaller than it's been in years past. but these are the people who just won't quit. God bless them. They are supporting my two bad habits of sleeping indoors and eating.
Yep.
So I just know that I cannot affordably promote that with online media anymore because I
Mm.
went too broad. And I'm not, at least at this point, I'm not willing to restructure the entire publishing business and find some little niche to market to. I just want to keep writing what I want to write, you know?
Mhm.
So, and luckily it's bringing in enough income to feed my fat face.
Right on. You ever consider like relaunching a supplement business, or is that just all a whole new world than it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago?
It's a lot different.
Mm.
You know, the regulatory aspect of
Yeah.
it is very unpalatable to me. Um, Mostly the people who have to worry about that are the really big businesses because the three-letter alphabet agencies who are over that stuff, you know, most people don't know this, but they are actually for they're they're internationally owned for-profit private corporations. And how they make their money is through they sue people, they sue businesses. That's how they make their money. So going after a small player is not worth their time.
Hmm.
So, like the type of businesses I start would probably never get on the radar. They just go after the big businesses because that's how they get, multi-million dollar or hundreds of millions of dollars lawsuits. And that's how these alphabet agencies fund themselves. So I probably would not be at risk. I just don't like I do not like the regulatory aspect of it anymore. One time I did get on the radar of the most powerful three-letter alphabet agency in the world, one of the most powerful, the FDA,
Mm.
because I was selling a topical product. Now, this was a product that was also being sold in retail stores, brick-and-mortar stores, like supplement stores and stuff. But I was stupid. I got on the radar because it wasn't a gray area at that time. So it was legal, but they were talking about banning it. And I thought, oh, I can exploit that in my copy. So like my pre-head of the web page selling this thing was like soon to be banned by the FDA. Well, I mean, even back then, this was probably early 2000s, they still had automations and bots that would go online and search stuff. I got on the radar and it was kind of scary, I don't want to deal with that anymore. Plus, like I'm gonna say this. I don't say this to discourage anybody from getting in the supplement business. This is based on my perceptions, so this might be inaccurate. But I have started multiple supplement businesses, and I know that business well, so it might be accurate. Just caveat emptor here. Um, it's going to be really, really, really hard to find a supplement to sell that is truly unique these days.
Yeah.
And so that makes it difficult. Regulatory issues aside, that alone makes it a very difficult business. In most cases, what's going to happen is somebody is just going to do what they call private label a supplement that a manufacturer is already making. And so you private label it, you give it your own name, you put your own company name on there and all that stuff. There is nothing unique or original about that whatsoever. And now you have to invent something unique
The
or
USP,
original
sure.
about that, which I just don't want to do anymore because you know what? You can't. You know, you're putting lipstick on a pig, man. There's nothing unique about this supplement. There are thousands of other people selling the same damn thing. And now, you as a marketer or copywriter or the poor copywriter you hire to do it for you is going to, practically burst a blood vessel in their brain trying to figure out how to make this thing look unique. It ain't unique. Those are the two biggest reasons I don't want to go back in the supplement business.
I mean, a lot of it's just positioning, right? You're just trying to make yourself appear different. Um, but to be honest, that's kind of the case, especially with the internet now that everything's available to anybody's fingertips. You can get the same thing at a Walgreens or a Target or a Walmart. Um, it's a lot of it's positioning even in that, or physical products at all. Um, my son and I were brainstorming last night trying to come up with, I don't know if you're familiar with these, but they got little heater pads that you can like plug into a USB port and it keeps your coffee hot. I was like, why don't they make something like that that makes it cold? Well, they do. You
Well,
know,
that's that's a good idea, but
yeah,
they do, right?
but they do.
Okay.
Yeah. But he and I brainstormed like 15 different ideas on, okay, if we don't have a pad, how else can we make our drinks cold? And he's 9 and I'm old. And so we're just kind of come up with different ideas. But yeah, like even if I had this brilliant breakthrough idea for a physical product, somebody in China is going to replicate it. And, you know, everything is just the competition is just more massive, just constantly.
Yeah, it really is. It was, here again, I'm going to sound like the geezer. It was so much easier prior to the internet because there were barriers to entry. Like, even though I bought an ad for just 200 measly bucks in a magazine, just that one step alone kept whoever knows how many hundreds of thousands of people out of the mail order business.
Yeah.
'Cause first of all, they don't know how to do it. Second of all, they don't have the guts to do it. You got to call an ad rep. These are all things that nobody has ever done before. Lots of barriers to entry. There were costs involved too, although in my case, it was extremely bootstrapped, but still, there were costs involved. If you're in the mail order business, you had to print letters, you had to get them stuffed in envelopes, you had to pay for stamps. The internet really lowered the barrier to entry. Even with it, when the internet really did become a viable marketing medium, it was still much easier back in the day. Like I got my bodybuilding supplement business got online and it was either late 96 or 97. That was super, super early in the internet marketing game. Like nobody was selling online back then. Nobody knew how to do it. Um, it was so much easier. Email marketing was so much like people were excited to get an email, So when you
Uh-huh.
sent an email with a pitch, that was something brand new. It was a lot easier. It is so much harder today for all the reasons you stated. Like, so I found a workaround to that. Um, and that is, I mean, there is something you can sell that is truly unique that nobody else on earth has, ever will have, or can offer. And you can sell it, depending upon the market you're targeting and how you go about it. You can sell it for really high prices, like, you know, multi thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know. And the unique thing that you're selling is you.
Yeah. Got me interested, but I think I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only unique thing you can sell these days,
Hmm.
which I mean, let's talk pragmatically. I mean, in theory, that all sounds great, right? But how are you going to sell you for $100,000? Well, you figure out you figure out a segment of the population that will pay big bucks for some kind of service. And then you go into that high fee service. And the only way they can get it is through you
Hmm.
know, and you are the dude, right? Like Dan Kennedy, I know he gets hundreds. A copywriting gig for him, minimum will be 100 grand. And that's probably the low end. It's
Hmm.
probably going to be closer to 180, $200,000 when other copywriters are scrambling on, Upwork for $200 gigs.
Yeah.
Why is it? Well, he's Dan Kennedy. There's only one of him, and he's done the work to position himself as Dan Kennedy as that unique guy, you
Hmm.
know. So not easy, but you can sell something unique and you can sell it for really big money.
Hmm. Yeah, he's got a product called, I don't know, seven figure marketing or marketer or something, but that's his big thing throughout that is um, standing out and being a personality, basically.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and
and I heard that stuff for decades and it went in one ear and out the other until I sold that supplement business and then didn't know what business I was going to start. So I started, doing some work as a hired gun copywriter. And that's when those lessons really made sense because I'm like, oh man, I'm getting beaten half to death here by these clients. And it's not easy. It requires work. I mean, if you're going to sell yourself as a writer, you're going to have to write a lot of stuff. You're going to have to put it out there. You're going to have to figure out, you know, what's unique about you and really play up on that. Um, but once you've done it, then you are truly in that position of having something that is genuinely unique that your ideal avatar really wants and will pay big bucks for it.
mhm. I mean, I think that's what I've been spending years doing, just studying the old masters like yourself and Halbert and um, just learning all their lessons because I think so many marketers today are flash in the pan type approaches and look for like humorous ads rather than effective ads and stuff like that. And it's just like they're not, the more people go that way, fine, let them because I want to go this way and take it over,
Exactly.
as best I can.
I'm writing something on that exact topic um for my March newsletter. And it appears based on my perceptions of seeing people promoting themselves on social media and seeing ads that are being run for various service providers that like the youngsters believe that promotion trumps value, that if as long as they know how to promote, they can make a bunch of money without truly providing any value. Or in the worst case scenario, it's basically a con artist. They're selling you something that they have not done themselves. And that works for a while,
Mhm.
and you can keep upping it. You can, just like Schwartz talked about in breakthrough advertising, you can just keep upping the stakes and keep shouting louder and you outshout the others. And that works for a while. What worked initially was, you know, lose 30 pounds.
Yep.
And then somebody's going to take it up a notch, lose 30 pounds in 6 months.
Mhm.
And that works for a while. Then somebody's going to lose 30 pounds in 90 days. Then we start getting to the
More
ridiculous,
sophisticated.
lose
Yeah.
30 pounds in 30 seconds, and then it all falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's the same with all these people promoting themselves online now as coaches or whatever it is they sell, membership programs and stuff. They're going to fizzle out. Same thing with the internet marketing gurus, the early 2000s when internet marketing was new. None of those guys are still around doing what they used to do.
Hmm.
It just fizzled out, because the fraud gets exposed. Promotion does not trump value. When you have true substance and true value, you've put in the blood, sweat, and tears to get really good at what you do, and you do provide value, well, then you promote it and you're good to go. But what seems to be working right now and will work for a little while is the promotion over substance. The younger people think, well, because I can build a following on social media, I can sell the crap out of whatever it is that I really don't have the chops to do. It doesn't matter because I know how to promote it.
Hmm.
That's all going to fizzle out. Maybe we're seeing the beginning of it fizzling out. Guys like you will still be left standing, and
Let's hope
it's
so.
going to be better for you than,
Yeah. I mean,
when they fizzle out.
that's how I see it. But we also have then the whole can of worms that is AI, and like I've seen it produce copy that I don't think is great, but it probably works for some businesses or some people. I also think it for people who know what they're doing, they spend more time fixing it than just writing the damn thing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, heard recently that AI gains like 10 years of human experience every 24 hours. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's basically just getting more and more all the time. And if it can generate writing or images, then it's like, man, I gotta find a physical job. You know?
You and I have had the same thoughts because like I really have not played around with it much at all. I've played around a little bit with Chat GPT
Mm.
with a few things. And I used it just the other day as more or less a thesaurus, you know. And one of my copywriter friends turned me on to one called Claude AI. And he claims it's better than Chat GPT. And he says he's got some prompts that can get it to produce some pretty decent stuff. Um, I mean, just based on conversations I have with people, you know, it appears if somebody is an experienced copywriter, they could probably use that to create copy that would work for, you know, like any business that kind of like B and C level copy would work for. I mean, they could probably produce that with AI as long as they got a copywriter's eye looking over it to kind of copy chief it and edit some stuff or
Mhm.
whatever. Um, And that's a little scary to think like, my God, what I've spent more than 30 years getting good at could be taken away
Yeah.
at any moment.
Yeah. But it sounds like that's kind of everything. Not just writing, it's accounting departments or,
Yeah.
lots of stuff. So, but
Yeah.
somehow or another, it'll either all wash out or we're all doomed. Who knows?
We shall soon see, right? I was,
Yeah.
um, do you know who Brian Kurtz is?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I was at a dinner that he put on in Tampa a few weeks ago, and there were several copywriters there, and AI came up in conversation. And I said something that nobody understood. They just didn't get it. What I said was, even if AI gets to the point where it can really write better copy than an A-list copywriter, you know, um, I still will continue to write the old school way. Um, because I think you'll relate to this. I think any writer who's been doing it for any length of time can understand this. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally when you're writing, you become fully present and you get into a flow state that is, I would probably, I want to say, which is like a meditative state, but I'd have to correct myself and say it is a meditative state. Your brain actually changes frequencies and you go from the beta level, which is the level we're at right now, which is we need for normal daily functioning, and it slips into a lower hertz. I forget what ranges it is, but it's called the alpha state.
Mhm.
And when you're in that state, you are fully present and your focus is like laser focus. And you're in that flow state. And I've achieved that through writing, several times. Like I said, it doesn't happen all the time. When it does happen, it's a state of bliss, man. So even if AI could produce stuff, I'm still going to keep writing. The people at that meeting didn't get it because they responded like, oh, yeah, there's the human element that's that human element that gets infused in your writing that AI can't duplicate. Like that wasn't my point. My point
Yeah.
was, let's say AI does get to that level. It becomes self-aware and it can infuse that emotional human level at the quantum level that is felt by other people. Let's say AI can do that. I'm still going to keep writing for the simple fact that, man, that flow state, that being fully present and the bliss you experience from it is so wonderful even if it occurs rarely, I'm still going to keep writing with the hope of achieving that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why people are attracted to writing, right? Or music or whatever it happens to be, that you just get in that zone. And it's also why it's, I think, so difficult to, sometimes just immediately crank out an answer to somebody saying, "Oh, I just need this quick piece of copy." And it's like, my brain, I can write something, but like
Yeah,
for it to be my best work or something, I need a little bit of time to buckle down and I'll get back to you. You know?
absolutely.
Yeah. That flow state, I'm gonna clunkily somehow connect it to a number of years ago, you started getting more into spirituality, and your Doberman Dan letter would talk about, I mean, I should have pulled a couple out to more clearly reference it, but you just started getting more into the spiritual realm of how you were starting to live your life and how that was impacting your work. And I'd like to hear how that's going for you.
It's been an interesting journey to say the least. At times, I hear stuff that comes out of my mouth or I read stuff I write and I think that's completely batshit crazy. And like a few years ago, if I would have read any of that, I'd be like, yeah, this dude's lost it. Um, Long story short, I discovered late in life that I don't have a normal nervous system. I have an overabundance of mirror neurons.
Okay.
And those are the neurons that really what makes us human, right? Like when somebody yawns and you see them yawn and you yawn, that's your mirror neurons working. The mirror neurons are what allow us to have empathy for other human beings. And there's about 1 to 2% of the population that has too many of those things. And they
More
call those
human than
people,
human, huh?
yeah, they call those people empaths.
Okay.
And I've like I've known I wasn't right my entire life.
That's
I
not a
knew
fair way
that.
to look at
I knew
it.
something was wrong. It
No.
wasn't until about 2 years ago that I realized, oh, it's the mirror neurons. I'm an empath. And so the police department experience, working in the inner city, that's going to be tough on any human being. Somebody who's an empath, it destroys you. And so since 1986, even though I didn't know what it was back then, and I wasn't even identified until recently, I've had PTSD since 1986 with accompanying chronic pain, often debilitating chronic pain that no doctor, chiropractor, medical practitioner of any kind could figure out why that was because there was nothing structurally wrong. Um, and that had made life suck. And so I think it was 2018, I read about an experimental treatment for PTSD and chronic pain and anxiety and depression using ketamine, which is an anesthetic. When given a high dosage, it works as an anesthetic. They use it in surgery, but in lower doses, it's a hallucinogen. So they were having a lot of success, like instant success with PTSD and stuff,
Wow.
um, with a series of ketamine intravenous infusions. So at that point, I was desperate. So I went to try that. And it was very clinical. You go to medical office, there's a doctor, a psychiatrist there, or a nurse practitioner who administers it. And they don't really prepare you. They just tell you like, yeah, you've read the research. We've had a lot of success with this for PTSD and depression and chronic pain. And you sit in a chair and they stick that thing in your vein. That's all the preparation you have. I had a profound metaphysical experience that
Hmm.
first time. And you know, what it does is it basically kind of like shuts up your left side of your brain so the right side, the intuitive side, can operate like it's supposed to. And there's MRIs, I've seen MRIs of the brain before ketamine and while on ketamine. On ketamine, it's lighting up like a Christmas tree. Your brain is functioning like it is able to do. And so, I've seen things, I've experienced things. Um, and after that first treatment, I'm like, what the hell just happened to me? Because I'm getting these messages that we are all one, and the power that unites us all and runs the entire universe and everything and our reality is love. And like, what the hell is going on? Nothing has prepared me for this. So that started me on a journey of trying to figure out what I just experienced. So I went down, I grew up in a Christian household, but that was just a cultural thing, right? Back then, everybody was something. You were a Methodist, Baptist, a Catholic, whatever, and you went to church with your family every Sunday, and that was it. It was just like a social slash cultural thing. So, I started exploring the Eastern scriptures and stuff like that. Um, there's a world-renowned yoga guru who lives in the Ocala National Forest. Like I started going to his teachings to learn from him. And then, reading the Eastern scriptures. Then finally I realized like, oh, the Bible makes sense now. The Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads opened up my eyes to what the Bible was saying. So I got back into that, so I got into meditation, try to connect with that divinity within. And then, so I started realizing a bunch of stuff. The most frustrating thing for me in this business of the teaching entrepreneurship and marketing stuff was like most people fail with the stuff they buy from me, any courses or anything, so they fail. And and most of the time they fail because of lack of implementation. But then there's others who do implement and still fail with stuff that's proven. And that always fascinates. I mean, that takes me back to the Amway days too. Like most people fail in that. I could never figure out why. And I'm realizing that, this is all a metaphysical issue. This is all based on how they're thinking. Like as cliche as it sounds or as woo-woo as it sounds, like your thoughts and feelings create the reality that is presented to you. I'm working on, I don't know if it's going to turn into a book or it's just going to be a report. I got to come up with a better title. The current working title is based on something in the Psalms, which it says, "Have I not told you that you are gods?" So the working title I was initially thinking was, "You are a god." The religious people are going to hate it.
Yeah.
But I can prove through quantum physics that you are a god. You are literally creating the reality in front of you.
Mhm.
Literally, what you think you're seeing and what you think is solid and what you think is out there is not out there in the form you think it is. And quantum physics has proven that. It's
Yeah.
just all light, it's just waveform energy that your nervous system interprets it to be what it is, right?
Mhm.
You are truly creating the reality because it is inside your nervous system. It is not out there. So that fascinated me. It also frustrated me. Like I know this marketing stuff works. Why are people failing at it? And it's because most of us just simply we've been brainwashed to not even recognize the divinity that's within us. Like this body will not work without that spark of divinity that's in you. That is what is animating you. In it, you live and move and have your being. The Bible personifies it and says, "In Him we live and move and have our being." It's been personified as a father, figure. It's been personified in various ways, but it's the divinity within. So, I went down that rabbit hole to suffering, intense suffering will eventually force you to start looking at these things. And I went through some intense suffering, over the past several years, stuff I never ever thought I'd have to deal with. And so that's what taken me down the rabbit hole. So, I mean, that is my number one passion right now. Obviously, I'm going to talk about it. Obviously, I'm going to write about it in the newsletter. Most people, I realize they don't want to hear it.
I I grew up as a Catholic a long time ago, when I was like 15 or something, 30 years ago. Read the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, and that like just kind of captured my imagination. And but then years went by without really even thinking too much about this stuff. And then I had kids, and all of a sudden, like the whole concept of God was just like omnipresence, and like so now I'm take my religion very seriously. I'm back to the Catholic Church. I attend Mass. I love it. It's like I love it absolutely. So,
I love the Catholic tradition. I converted late in life.
oh yeah.
You know, I was married to a Colombian, and of course, like everybody from Latin America is Catholic. And so she's in there, and she didn't speak English. So there was a mass in Spanish at one of the local churches. She'd drag me along. I didn't know anything about the Catholic Church. What I knew was all negative, you know,
Mm,
not true, but it's
sure.
what I thought. But, and so, and I started going there just to support her. I wasn't into it. But then when I started learning stuff about it, and then learning stuff about some of the saints, I get really intrigued. When I get intrigued by something, I go deep. So I started reading a lot. I fell in love with it so much so that I, converted to Catholicism late in life. And, even at one time, like after I was so enamored with Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, who are both made doctors of the church, not just saints, they are doctors of the church. Teresa of Avila, I think, was the first female doctor of the church. And I was so enamored with the Discalced Carmelites and their spirituality. Um, after after I got divorced, one of my friends said, you could have the church annul your marriage, and then you could go and be a monk at a Discalced Carmelite monastery if you wanted to. And I considered it.
Yeah.
Um, because their whole way of life is contemplative prayer, which
Yeah.
in the East they call that meditation. In the West, they call it contemplative prayer, which is just, going inward to connect with God, who is within all of us. And so I really considered it. I think I would have eventually gone crazy because I'd want to do all the stuff I still want to do, like play guitar and
Yeah.
go to the gym. But I love the Catholic tradition. When I look into other traditions, I've fallen in love with them too. Like I've fallen in love with the Eastern scriptures, and I've read the Tao Te Ching also, and like, man, I love them all and I love the people in the various traditions because they're seekers, right? We're all trying to find the same thing.
Poor of spirit.
I get criticized for talking about this in a business setting or when I'm supposed to be talking about copywriting and marketing, but the biggest frustration to me is like most people, like all my subscribers, what they want the magic formula. Tell me the formula, the copywriting formula, the marketing formula that's going to make me a lot of money. There is none. It's all basics. It's all very basic direct response marketing, right? It's direct response 101. You can make a fortune with it. The thing that's holding us all back is the mindset and the limitations we have. And we have these limitations because the whole system has programmed that into us, especially if you went to public school, which I like to call the government sponsored youth indoctrination camp.
Yeah, my wife's a teacher.
Oh gosh, she
In
probably
public
hates
school.
me. Probably hates me. The people in that system are good people. It's
The
the
system
system
is tough. Yeah.
that's, it's designed, it's a successful system. It's designed to produce factory workers who don't think for themselves. It's successful at that, so we grow up with all those limitations, and then our parents had them and they get passed on to us. So it doesn't matter the stuff I teach about direct response marketing or copywriting. The sad fact of the matter is it's going to fail for most people because this is not right. The
Mm.
mindset is not right. Now, in my case, I failed. time and time and time again, 9 years of straight multiple business failures. But during that process, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to keep, I know I got to fix something. I kept searching for what I had to fix. Um, so I went through a period of personal growth that finally allowed me to have a business that was successful in making money. So I'm not saying you need to go, join a monastery and chant Om for the next 10 years before you can start a successful business. Ideally, you've got both tracks going at once. You're learning the pragmatic how-to stuff, but you're also getting your mindset straight because the how-to stuff alone is just not going to do. I've been living it for 40 years.
Mhm.
When the mindset is wrong and you don't acknowledge the metaphysical aspect of this, that, you know, according to the Psalms, and Jesus even quoted it, you are a God. With a small g. I
Mhm.
like I like what Bill Murray said in Groundhog Day. He said, I'm a God. And the female protagonist, whatever her name was, said, you're God? He said, no, I'm a God. I'm not the God, I don't think. What he's trying to say is there is a divinity within that animates us all that we have access to, you know? So yeah, I really got long-winded on that, but it's just I know what happens when people can begin to acknowledge that and they start practices to connect with that divine power. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added unto you. So when you're taught to seek it outside of yourself, like there's some old guy with long hair and a beard that's really, really far away on some distant planet in heaven. Well, now that's duality. You're separate from that, right?
Mhm.
But Eastern and Western scriptures, it's repeated so often in the book of John, it's almost annoying. The kingdom of God is within. Like, how many times do you need to hear that until you accept it?
Yeah.
Granted, lots of people in religions teach that it's not, that it's outside of you and you're separate from it.
Mhm.
But, look at the source, man. The source is telling you it's within you. So I've seen miracles happen when people develop practices to connect with that regularly. The how-to alone, when you've got a limited mindset, which all of us do, is just a recipe for frustration. That's why I talk about it. I actually have to hold myself back from talking more about it because that's where the true breakthroughs occur. You can learn direct response marketing in a weekend if you want to. And now, granted, this is self-serving, but I believe this is true. And I think if I could look at it objectively, I would even agree with myself. If somebody would get all the back issues of my newsletter and spend a weekend reading them, they got all the knowledge they need in marketing and copywriting to build any size income they want. Right here is the limiting factor. That has to be worked on.
Right on. Yeah. Amen.
And I
So,
love the rosary. Speaking of Catholicism,
yeah.
I love the rosary. And you can look it up on PubMed. I mean, if you want to practice for connecting with the divine, that's a darn good one. And look it up on PubMed. Now, granted, the study they did was saying the rosary in Latin,
Mm.
uh, but the cadence of it and the number of syllables, whether you are aware of it or not, whether you want it or not, gets your breathing rate down to about 6 breaths per minute.
Hmm.
That puts you in the alpha brainwave state.
Interesting.
When people say, I feel such a sense of peace when I say the rosary, there you go.
Yeah.
An
Sure.
intelligence greater than us created that prayer to get your nervous system to respond, to get your breath rate down to six
Yeah,
breaths per minute. I believe the syllables and the structure are similar enough in English that it's the same thing.
it might be. Yeah.
I
I mean,
just, it's just the
I've read it.
study, you know.
I read it in Latin aloud, and the way I speak it, and when I was reading it, I was basically shoehorning it into my English,
Mhm.
cadence. But yeah, and I was with some friends at a guys' weekend last weekend, and one of them says, "Oh, I wake up like every morning at 5:30 to get ready for work, and now it's the weekend. I'm just gonna wake up at 5:30, and my brain starts going crazy." It's like, yeah, you guys try saying the rosary, like just
Yeah,
and the next day he was like, it worked.
it works, man. It
Yeah.
really does. And there's a yoga practice. There's various forms. When people talk in the West, when you say yoga, people think of the poses and all that stuff you
Mm.
do. That's one form of yoga. There's many other forms of yoga. Um, like Mother Teresa practiced yoga. I forget what they call it. What Bhakti yoga is the yoga of serving others. There's all kinds of different yogas, but there's one form that you say certain words while either touching, like you say a certain word, you touch these fingers together, these fingers, or using the mala beads. You When you say the prayer, you move to a different beat because there's a connection. I don't know specifics of it. There's a connection. There's something happens in your nervous system that when you are doing that with your fingers in combination with getting the breath rate lower, in the East, they call them mudras, that affects your nervous system in a way that brings about a sense of peace. So with the rosary beads, you're moving the beads between your fingers while you're saying a prayer that gets your breath rate down to, on average, 6 breaths a minute. The combination of those two has an effect on your nervous system. So it's not woo woo at all. I mean, this is stuff that's been proven that it literally alters your nervous system and your brainwave states.
I hadn't heard that about the hand. Well, actually, when I don't have my rosary beads with me, I will pray for the 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for the 10 numbers.
Yeah.
And just wait for me to count. That's real curious.
Yeah, I've done that too with my fingers when I didn't have
Yeah.
the beads with me.
Huh. All right. Well, that was maybe my favorite part of this whole conversation.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, wow, that really went down the rabbit hole. We lost everybody on that
Yeah,
one.
well, that might be true. So, what's next? What are you up to next? You just moved to a new apartment in Florida and
Yeah,
weather's
I
probably
don't know.
beautiful.
I honestly don't know what's next. And in years past, I would have been freaking out and big time anxiety about that. Now I'm like, take it a day at a time. I I'm gonna get back into music. I've completed an album that will be released soon. It was delayed because of a chaotic personal situation and the move I made from Ocala to Orlando. But now I'm, down in Orlando, loving it here. Um, you know, I still might occasionally take a copywriting gig, like if it's the right person and the right product or service that I could really get behind, I'm still am interested in writing copy. It's just it's not going to anybody who hits me up with the thing like, hey, I just private labeled this supplement, that 4 million other people are selling. Will you write copy for it? No, no, no. I would rather sleep under a bridge and eat out of dumpsters than do that gig. So yeah, I'm still writing my newsletter. Um, when the right copywriting gig comes along, I'll probably take it. And believe it or not, getting into the music business. I'm going to start marketing my album and start networking with the musicians here in this area, one probably the most visited tourist location in the world. So lots of opportunities for live entertainment. And yeah, that's what I'm up to.
You got a guitar right next to you? Want to play something for us?
I got a guitar across the room. It's not plugged in though.
All right, all right.
And here's what's very humbling. I had my heart broken in October, and then my life imploded, and up and moved. There was a lot of stuff going on, and and it killed my desire to play music. I had until just Monday, I hadn't picked up a guitar since October. I picked it
Wow.
up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like a beginner again. My fingers won't do what I want them to do, what they
Mm,
could do previously. So now I'm in that phase of, man, the first 21 days of practicing daily and trying to get my skills back. That is hard. But you know
sure.
what? After 21 days, then you're in a groove and it gets easier. So I would be embarrassed to play anything for you right now.
Yeah, I played as a teenager or something. I was never good. And I don't know what it was, but something 6 weeks ago, well, 6 weeks ago, I fell on an ice rink and broke my wrist. And like the very next day, oh, I watched the Dylan movie and I went home and was like, I just want to go play my guitar. It's like, I
Yeah.
can't.
Oh man, that's too bad.
But
This too shall pass.
yes,
Then
it
you can
will.
play the
It will
guitar.
indeed. Yeah, you do like a lot of, I think, jazz music, is that right?
Yeah, I'm a wannabe jazz musician.
What
It's a fusion, right? It's kind of a combination of rock and jazz.
I mean, why
There's
say
more.
wannabe? Why would you even say you're a wannabe? Like you can do it?
Like when I hear the real masters who play like bebop, I'm like, damn.
Well, you got to start somewhere. But
Yeah,
anyways, you could do an informational course on how to move from, just
from rock to jazz.
boring old, 1 4 5 chords to a jazz progression.
Yeah, all that would be fun.
All right, Dan, thanks for your time. How can people find you?
Oh, the best way to find me is at my website, dobermandan.com.
Cool. Hey, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate your time.
I've enjoyed it, Jeffrey. It was been looking forward to it, and I really appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's stay in touch and
Sure, man.
great. Hey, thanks everybody for joining Doberman Dan and me, your host, Jeffrey Thomas, here on the Persuasion Play Podcast. You can learn more at goldmine.marketing, where I have additional podcasts. You can sign up for my email list and have a whole bunch of book reviews, um, things about direct response marketing, persuasion, motivation, and influence, and how you can influence your brain and the brains around you towards better outcomes. Have a great day.